This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast was recorded at the Sage Transform Conference in October of 2022. Because it's a little shorter than our usual episodes, this episode does not qualify for free CPE on the Earmark app. However, it's a great interview. I hope you listen, and I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast, live at Sage Transform. I'm David Leary.
I'm Blake Oliver.
And Blake, we have our second interview today. This is Dr. Cameka Smith. She is the founder of the Boss Network.
The Boss Network?
The Boss Network. Cameka, please,
yes.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So what is the Boss Network?
Oh, wow. So the Boss Network is actually a digital platform for Black women in business. So I tell people to think of Facebook for women in business. You know, our community, we created this space so that women could essentially network beyond the events. I started my first entrepreneurial journey in event marketing and event planning. And so I was creating these events for women to come together and talk about entrepreneurship and also careers. And a lot of the women were like, how do we join? And I was like, join what? This is just events. And that gave me the idea.
So it's a community.
It's a community.
Join. Okay, got it. Because
yeah,
the in-person is just not enough. If you go to a session for an hour and you leave and
absolutely.
Then it's over. Okay, so it's a community. Now, is it a free website for people to join?
So we have aspects. It is a membership-based platform, but there are aspects of our platform that are open to all of our subscribers. Like our newsletter, our blog is, accessible. But the core of what we do is membership-based because we're really working with these entrepreneurs to help them, grow and scale their businesses.
So when you were on stage, so you had some stats on stats about Black women entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And they're shocking. Like, do you know, you probably know them better than I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's nearly about 2.7 million businesses nationwide, but they still face disparities financially when it comes to growing their business. Less than 1% get access to venture capital. And so 61% of Black women self-fund their startups because they can't get access to loans through traditional financial institutions.
I think that bears worth repeating. You said less than 1%?
Yeah, less than 1%.
Venture capital.
Yeah, and it's very alarming. I was telling my team today that I kind of did some recent research and I saw that it was 2%. So I was like, oh, move it on up there. Not the case. But yeah, it's still alarming that we have so far to go in 2022. And the pandemic, it just created so many more entrepreneurs. And these businesses are still, struggling to kind of make it financially because, they don't have access to the traditional loans and VC funding like other businesses.
Please continue. I didn't mean to. So you had some other stats that you were going to bring up.
Well, so that's really the most alarming part, not being able to get access to the funding, not being able to get loans. And then we saw, with the payment protection program with the PPP loan, that was supposed to be for the, people who are struggling the most, that those entrepreneurs in that first round didn't even get access to it, So that was just, it was just alarming and it's such a shock. And so for me as a founder and a small business owner myself, I was just like, okay, what can I do to help? Because you only can inspire people so much. You only can say, you can do it, then it's like, but I need resources, I need tools, I need financial, capital. And that's where, I wanted to kind of level up even my business to figure out how to help these women. Yeah.
So when that program happened, you were helping your entrepreneurs in your community figure out how to get those PPP loans, and because the banks, a lot of the big banks, were not helping new customers.
They were not. Yeah, we really went through just more kind of like an educational component where we were hosting trainings and workshops on how to actually apply for these loans, trying to get relationship with banks that would actually talk to these entrepreneurs. Because a lot of times it's based on relationships, and most of our small businesses either, kind of maybe just got a business account or not even, have a business account because they're, operating as like solo entrepreneurs or sole proprietors. And so not having that relationship made it really hard because now you just see an application. You don't see a person, they don't have a personal banker, And so just teaching them the things that they need to learn to even position themselves for these opportunities is a part of, the growth process.
So Cameka, what do you think is the cause of this lack of investment in Black female entrepreneurs, like the rate of 2% or less? Is it because they don't have the network?
Yeah.
Or is it because when you go pitch to a VC, they are not receptive because of race or?
Well, to be honest, it's a combination of all those things. The racial inequality is rampant in so many different areas. And so this is not, one that, it's not touching as well. So the racial disparity comes from, just our country not really supporting minorities in general. So it just trickled down into all these different areas, and this being one of them. So, you have a situation where Black women are the fastest group of entrepreneurs growing businesses, but then 60% of those businesses are not even thriving because they don't have the financial support or backing. And again, I think what you're talking about with resources and access, that's a big part of it, because most VCs, they're looking at businesses that, they can see themselves in. And I always tell people that, right, if you're a bald white male, you might not really understand, the benefits in the billion-dollar industry that a Black hair care company can offer, right? Because it's just not something that you're, used to seeing. So I think understanding and even having an interest to understand these industries is important.
Yeah, understanding the market. It's, if you're not part of that, group or that culture, it's tough to understand it.
Yeah.
And so then you raised a fund so you can invest. And
Absolutely.
And that's why you're partnering now with Sage.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm the type of person where I launched my community, this platform 14 years ago. And I launched it for myself because I was a Black woman that was looking to grow a business and didn't really know where to go, didn't know how to get started. And so as I started to talk to entrepreneurs, because I'm an educator, I started my career in education. And so I knew the power of community just from, when you work in a school system, you got to bring all the resources together to support the children. And so I knew I wanted to bring that into my business. And I said, okay, if I'm learning about growing a business, I need to bring this back to my community. And I created the Boss Network platform to be able to share my resources with other women. So as I saw what was happening around the pandemic and all these companies that were, folding essentially because of COVID, I said, okay, what can I do as a founder? If nobody's going to invest in my community, then I'm going to invest in them. I mean, I started my business at a time where, Black women in entrepreneurship wasn't even a thing. I mean, I literally had people telling me like, that's not going to work. Like nobody's interested in that. But I was listed very early, I think my second year in business, and Forbes is one of the top 10 websites for women in entrepreneurship. And so that validation motivated me, like this is actually important. And I saw a trend that was going to happen way before it actually happened.
So the accounting profession has a diversity problem. This is something that we know we have. The professions acknowledge this at the highest levels.
Yeah.
And it's been...
And the numbers are similar.
So let's just take the female equation, right? Partners at accounting firms, like especially at big ones, it's like less than 30%, less than 20% are women. Yeah. So we're not even close to half.
Right.
And then Black accountants, I mean, I think like less than 1% of CPAs are Black.
Right. Yeah. So it kind of, the racial inequality is rampant in a lot of different industries, particularly I would say more financial lucrative industries, right? And so what I feel and what I've always felt is, companies and, organizations, the best ways to help change that is through mentorship, is through education, awareness. If we're creating, programs starting in grammar school or high school, exposing young people to these different career opportunities. If we're in college, giving minorities an opportunity to actually intern. And if we see someone that has potential talent at our firm, why not put that person under your wing and say, hey, let me show you how to really grow in this career. So I think we all have a stake in changing, the issues around diversity.
How can accountants and accounting firms support your community and what you're doing? What can we be doing better? Yeah.
Well, I think that, one of the biggest issues is, with entrepreneurship is, financials, like being able to actually understand your financials. Most businesses fail because, sometimes you get lucky, right? You start a business and you get lucky. How do you actually scale, right? How do you actually learn your bookkeeping, your tax preparation? How do you get those skills? So I think it's important for the accounting industry to say, hey, how can we support, these small businesses through mentorship or coaching or actually teaching them? And that's why the program that we have with Sage, our Boss Impact Fund and Invest in Progress grant is so unique because we're not only investing financially in these brands, but we're also giving them a 1-year scholarship to our Boss Business University. And within that university, we have like trainings every single month on different topics around business development. Right. So that's accounting, that's financial literacy, that's digital marketing, that's, customer service. So in Sage has offered their executives and their leadership team to be some of the mentors. So yeah, it's been great.
That's great. So outside of mentorship and just lack of exposure to business, what are some of the other issues that Black female entrepreneurs have that maybe we're naive on? being the two white dudes with the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
like, what other issues do they face outside of exposure and mentorship or not getting them?
Well, outside of exposure and mentorship, the funding is going to always be an issue, right? That's going to always be the biggest issue because we can, give people mentorship and coaching. And if we're not giving them financial support, I mean, you're really just setting them up for failure because they're still not going to grow. You have all this, information and it's like, what do I do with it? If I can't even, pay for some accounting software because I don't have the funding to do so, I can't scale and add a team member to my team to help me. If I don't have that financial support, then it's going to really be limited as far as how I can grow my business.
And so if I'm an accountant or bookkeeper and I have a female entrepreneur and it's very clear if I'm looking at her books that she needs more money.
Yeah.
Like, do I send her to you? Like, do I send her to the Boss Network and tell her, hey, go join this? Is that a way for accountants to support this effort, I guess?
I mean, yeah, I think that finding resources for your clients is important, right? There are a lot of programs out there right now that are doing grant programs. The Boss Network is just one of them.
Okay.
And I actually created it because I saw a lot of businesses launching them, especially prior, after George Floyd happened. A lot of companies said, we want to do more to help support the Black community. A lot of it was, lip service, in my opinion. I didn't really see it trickle down into those communities that needed it the most. And so if, I feel like, being advocates and allies is important, like you guys are doing right now, right? Having the conversation. Because, we think about in corporate culture, sometimes we are not aware of certain things that are happening. I had so many people walk up to me after the stage presentation with Steve Hare, the CEO, saying, I didn't even know this was an issue. Like, of course, we know there's inequalities, but we didn't know that, it was still less than 1%, less than 100 Black women have received $1 million in investments for their companies. When you have, other companies that are receiving multiple millions of dollars for just an idea, not even a formulated business. So it's, yeah.
What's a success story? Somebody that you've mentored, or is there maybe any brands or successes that our listeners might have heard of?
Yeah, well, we have, with the launch of our first Invest in Progress grant, we launched it with a $1.5 million investment. And so this first round, we were able to invest in 35 Black women entrepreneurs. We actually got over 15,000 applications in 30 days. So it was incredibly overwhelming, but also showed a huge need.
15,000 applications.
In 30 days.
Wow. And 35 spots.
Yes.
How did you go through it?
Well,
I mean,
I didn't. Like any good business person, you hire partners. And that's another thing that entrepreneurs need to understand. You can't do everything. The biggest way to grow is in collaboration. If you're a small business and there's certain things that you need for your business, collaborate with another small business and figure out how to support each other. So I partnered with a company called Hello Atlas, and they're a grants management company. And so they managed all the grants. They went through the entire, cycle of actually reading the applications, and then they sent us the top 100. Thank God. So from there, we were able to look at those 100 entrepreneurs and look at their businesses and look at them as founders, because that's important also, right? Is this a founder that's committed? Is this a founder that has already had some skin in the game, right? And those are the type of people that I want to work with, right? Because it's easy to start, especially nowadays, everybody's starting a business, right? But, who's actually really committed to the process, because it sounds good and looks great on social media. But when you get in the skin of it, in the thick of it, it is not easy, as you all, I'm sure, know, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of work, right? I tell people
coaster.
it's the hardest job you'll ever have, working for yourself.
Yeah.
So you got to have real committed people. And we have had so many great success stories. One of our founders, which is another industry that's very much lacking in diversity. She's a female architect in Chicago. And so we just did, for Black Business Month, which was in August, we did a feature with her and CBS News, because she was able to, as a, limited, African-American female architect and designer, she was able to actually get her own office space, right? And hire staff. I mean, we actually went to her office. It was stunning. I'm like, wow, this is amazing what you've been able to do. But she's like, this is because of the funding that I was able to get. Everybody wants to scale. Everybody wants to hire staff, but if you don't have the support there financially, how can you do it? So that was a really great opportunity to see that. And then we have another company called Vontel Eyewear, who just recently partnered with Disney to create eyeglasses for children, all of different cartoon characters. So they've only been in business 2 years, right? But through the support and this mentorship, they've been able to figure out, okay, how do I leverage my business to get customers and partnerships? So.
And then without your network, without the Boss Network, there's no way somebody who's going to go get a deal with Disney or get that support.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't even get a meeting or like just foot in the door or
Absolutely.
anything. That makes a lot of sense.
So a lot of what we're giving these women, it might sound cheesy, but it's confidence, right? Because a lot of times you feel, as a solo entrepreneur, you feel like it's just me in it, or, I can't do this. But when you have, a group of 35 other Black women that are on the same path as you, and now you have this community and this support, and then this, even more smaller cohort that you can lean on and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. What are you doing? And when we have these powwows, they're having conversations or asking questions, and they don't feel so alone. Like, oh, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I feel that way too. I literally had one of my entrepreneurs who told me that after she got the grant, she literally had anxiety because now all eyes were on her. And, before she was like on it. But now she has the funding. It's like people are expecting me to be great. And I told her it's not about great. You did some good and then you move to great, So just being able to have those conversations is important.
If people want to get in contact with you, if people want to go to the Boss Network, how do they find it? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so we are a digital platform, of course, so we're all over social media. They can follow us at The Boss Network on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Clubhouse, everywhere.
Cameka, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Blake, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you.